Hello and welcome to the Stars, Goddesses and What's for Tea podcast. My name is Samantha Selby and I am known as the astrological energy healer and channel for star goddess activations. I help the plate juggling women, the ones who really make the world go round, to lead a more spiritually aligned life, to recognise themselves as the goddesses that they truly are. I will be bringing the sometimes complicated concepts of astrology and energy healing down to earth and making them relevant to you and your life. If you haven't already, click on the link in the show notes to download my simple 2-step energy cleansing and alignment ritual so you can have your best day every day. Using the power of the planets, astrology and energy healing, you can take the inside track in your life and follow your soul pathway to the next level of soul ascension alongside human level health, wealth and happiness. So let's dive into all of this juiciness in today's episode. Welcome to this podcast where I'm going to share with you all of the juiciness connected to Saturn. Now, Saturn is the next planet in our Astrology as Alchemy series. And this is exploring each planet individually and how those planets, all of the planets of our solar system, make up your inner boardroom, your psyche, and how we can use them to understand ourselves, but also how you can use them to create alchemy in your life. And alchemy is the energy of change and transformation. Alchemy is taking something from one form and alchemizing it magically into another. And this is how we all learn, evolve and grow, through the energy of alchemy. So Saturn, as the last planet that we can see in the sky, is really important. So Saturn takes us to the space just inside our reality. Saturn is about reality. And Saturn is the second of the social planets. And his role is to take us to wisdom, success, and mastery. His role is the perfect foil for expansive Jupiter. So Jupiter is the planet of wishes, dreams, optimism, visioning, expansion, growth, abundance, faith, hope, beliefs. Jupiter is this planet that expands everything it touches, creates openings. And then Saturn comes along and says, okay, let's bring all of this back down to earth. And so Saturn can have a little bit of a bad rap. Saturn can be perceived as, this limiting energy. And to a certain degree, that's true. Saturn is associated with time. He is known as the master of time, with rules, with limits, restrictions, limitations. He's about boundaries, but he's also connected to responsibility, commitment, wisdom, and mastery. And Saturn, when we look at him as a planet, he is surrounded by rings. And so there comes the power of the rings. Now you're going to think of The Hobbit, obviously, the power of the ring. But Saturn's role is to teach us, to guide us, and to make us grow up. Saturn is about us stepping into our self-mastery. So when we look at the symbology of Saturn, from a mythology perspective, he was associated with, in Greek mythology, he was known for killing his father and swallowing his children. So there is this real kind of heavyweight energy. Saturn is one of the heavyweights of the astrology kind of cosmos, because as we move further outwards into the outer planets, so Saturn is a social planet, he's slow moving, takes 29 years to go round your chart to fully circle all of the signs. But his role is to create change and transformation. His role is to show us what isn't working. And his role is also to take you out the other side. So from a mythology perspective, he killed his father and he ate all of his children. And this was rooted in fear. He was afraid of his father, and he was afraid that his children would take away his power. So Saturn can show us our biggest fears. Saturn can show us where we will struggle and it will feel difficult. But Saturn will also show us how to move through those difficulties and to come out the other side. Because Saturn is also depicted in Roman mythology as a god of agriculture, of the seasons, of wealth, of social order. And Saturnalia was an ancient Roman festival in honor of Saturn. And it was actually held at the time of the winter solstice, celebrating the end of the solar year and the beginning of a new one. It was a public banquet with lots of gift giving and partying. Recognize this at all? How this relates to Christianity's Christmas? And at this feast, the masters had to provide table service for the slaves. It was seen as a time for freedom for everybody. And so the roles were reversed. But there was gift giving, there was a freedom. There was the energy that what this taught, what they wanted this feast to teach everybody was humbleness and rewards for doing a job well done. So the servants had worked all year for their masters, and then at Saturn's feast, they were rewarded for their hard work, and they were given what they desired, which was lots of food, lots of drink, lots of partying. And so Saturn is associated with success, seeing things through, and reaping the rewards. We have to learn to make friends with Saturn, because Saturn has these two different expressions, because he rules two different signs, Capricorn and Aquarius. So if he's in his Capricorn mode, he's practical, ambitious, political. But if he's in his Aquarius energy, he's logical, impartial, and wants a sustainable future. So Saturn can show up quite differently in your chart, dependent on house placement, sign placement, and relationship with other planets. And it's really important for us, if we want to have any form of success, and whatever success looks like is going to be unique to you, you have to make friends with Saturn. Having Saturn on your side is the key to everything, because it's how we perceive Saturn that makes such a difference. Now, I talked about Saturn's rings. Saturn, we cannot ignore them, they're there. Saturn exists inside these 7 rings made of icy chunks of rock. And so psychologically, we can experience Saturn as a fence or a boundary or a barrier. But Saturn can also be a structure, a framework, or a playground. It's how you perceive, for example, a field of sheep. You may want your sheep to roam free across the moors. They can go where they like. They can experience, the high moors. They can come down into the valleys, but they're free to move anywhere. The consequences of that are, if it snows, you've got to go and find your sheep because you don't know where they are. They have the freedom to eat whatever grasses they want to. They can roam free, but there is a risk in that. They could get lost. They could fall into a boggy pit and you won't know. Or You could keep your sheep inside a field. There could be a fence all the way around them. You will always know where they are. They will always be safe. But they're going to be limited on their freedom, their ability to roam. They will only eat the grass inside that field. And so our approach to Saturn can change. It can be a place for us to be safe inside, but it can also be a restriction. So Saturn is teaching you to know where you stand, to know what the boundaries of your playing field. Saturn is also teaching us that if you play by the rules, you'll be safe. Saturn is also teaching you about the energy of limitation. Because when Saturn is activated in different ways, so this can be through transits or positions, through other planets, it can bring up feelings of restriction, feelings of isolation, of limitation, depression, even scarcity. It can feel as if everything outside of the rings is out of your reach. You can't have it, it's denied to you. And so it's recognizing when this is triggered within you, because we can perceive the rings as a defense structure, or we can perceive the rings as us being kept safe. So when Saturn is activated, your defense mechanisms kick into place. Something from outside triggers you. You put up your fence. You put up your Saturn fence. You lock the door. You close off. You retreat back into your walls. Then you feel safe. Oh, it's lovely. I'm all safe in here. My door's locked. My windows are shuttered. Nothing's coming in to get me. But then I can't go out. I'm trapped. So you can feel safe and trapped at the same time. And so when we retreat behind our Saturn boundaries, yes, we are receiving safety initially, but it's then looking at the gift in that restriction and that confinement. Because when you are forced to retreat back behind your walls, you don't have anywhere else to go. You have to stay inside the fence and get very good at everything that is inside the fence, because there are no distractions. You're fully focused. You can spend the time to get better and better at something, and you might even begin to like it. And if we think about the time of year that Saturn rules, so Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, and the Sun is in Capricorn and Aquarius in late December and January. And in the natural world, when we were living by the cycles and the seasons, we would retreat behind our doors. We would come back into our community and sometimes into our homes because it was cold and perhaps it was unsafe outside. The weather would have been against us. So we would retreat, we would come back in. And in that retreating and coming back in, we get better at things. We have to go deeper within. We have to look at ourselves and internalize. And this is when communities would do their weaving. They would make garments. They would spin. They would whittle. They would make weapons, and they would make utensils. They would do all of the preparation because they had to. They couldn't do anything else. So they had to get really good at coming inwards and creating, getting good at perhaps inventing something that they could use in the coming year when they went back out into the world. So Saturn's highest goal is for you to get better and better at something until you master it. But in order to achieve that success and mastery, you have to make friends with confinement first. You have to put the effort and the energy in. If we think about all of the really successful people in the world, you know, the sports people, the musicians, they focus on their craft for many, many hours a day until they become the very best in their field. They experience mastery and excellence, wisdom and humbleness, because in that process of getting better and better, they have experienced failure. They've experienced things not quite working out, and then they've picked themselves up and they've gone again. And this is another lesson that Saturn shows and teaches us. Saturn has 7 stages. There are 7 layers of Saturn. Saturn has 7 rings. And Saturn's role is to teach you those lessons. Because whether you like it or not, we all have to deal with Saturn. And when you experience Saturn and go through the Saturn process, it is the most empowering and purposeful part of your life. But Saturn doesn't happen in 5 minutes. Saturn's journey around your natal chart takes 29 years. And this is what we call a Saturn return. So at the age of 29-ish, Saturn will have moved all the way around your natal chart and have come back to the place he was when you were born. And this is your Saturn return. Now, for many of us, we're not masters by the time we reach 30. I know I certainly wasn't. And so making friends with Saturn is a lifetime process, which is why Saturn goes round again. So you get a second Saturn return and then maybe a third Saturn return. And in all of this, you are learning Saturn through these 7 stages. And the 7 stages of Saturn are exactly what we need to learn in order to experience success and mastery. And wherever you are on the 7 stages of Saturn is exactly where you're meant to be. And what I've found with making friends with Saturn, because Saturn has been and continues to be my biggest teacher, but also where I can get my most visceral reactions. So Saturn for me is in my 11th house. And so all of the houses represent an area of your life. So the 11th house is all about community. It's about networking. It's about groups. It's about going wider into the world. It's also connected to social media. So the 11th house has all of these themes, and I have Saturn sitting right smack bang in the middle of it. So networking, groups, being part of a community can feel hard work for me. Literally being in a group of people, it's like I can be part of it, but I don't always feel completely comfortable. It's a very interesting energy to work through. Networking has literally made sick come into my mouth on numerous occasions. It's not my space where I feel most comfortable. So my barriers come up. Saturn does his thing. But over the years, I am gradually making friends with Saturn. And he is becoming a real key part of my life as I continue my journey and my exploration of this energy. So wherever you have Saturn in your chart, it can feel as if it's hard work, because this is a particular area where we have to learn the 7 stages of Saturn's development. Now, Saturn's development will happen in all areas of your life, but wherever Saturn sits in your natal chart and wherever Saturn transits, there is a focus on this. So The 7 stages of Saturn are, the first one is rules. We have to learn to live by rules. Now, you have to learn to live by the rules of what time you've got to get up in the morning. Because if you don't get up at a certain time, you can't do whatever comes next. You can't go to school, you can't go to work. And so the first lesson we have to learn about Saturn is rules. And once we've learned the rules, we can then break them. So you can choose, do you know what? I'm not setting my alarm tomorrow morning. I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to do that. I'm choosing to break that rule because it suits me. Because actually it's a Sunday and I don't want to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. So you learn the rule and then you choose which ones you're going to break. The second lesson we have to learn with Saturn is time. And you know, or a really good way of knowing, if you have, if you're learning the lesson of time, is how you talk about it. I don't have enough time. Time's running away with me. I lose time. I lose track of time. Time is an energy. And so our relationship with time is really important. So if you're always really late or really early, this is a Saturn lesson. I have been known, when my boys were younger, they used to play football, and I was always, if they said, okay, game starts at 1 o'clock, you need to be there by 12:30, I would get there. My aim is to get there at 12:30. I'm not going to get there early because I've got other things to do. I'm going to get there at 12:30. So we were always turning up just at the time, very rarely was I late, but it would be just at the time. I certainly wouldn't get there early. And my boys have a different relationship with Saturn. They say, we like it when Dad takes us to football because we always get there early. My answer was, why would you want to get there early? There are other things you could be doing rather than getting there early. And so my relationship with Saturn would show up exactly in that scenario. And so this is a continuing journey. It's a continuing evolution. I still do things to the point, if someone says you need to do this by then, that's when I will do it, by then. Highly unlikely me to do something before I need to. And that's where I am with Saturn. I'm learning to give myself more time, to gift myself some juicy Saturn energy, and to reprogram my relationship with time and Saturn. Now, the third lesson of Saturn is patience. And patience is about just sitting back and allowing. Saturn teaches us to be patient, to allow things to unfold, to not want things immediately. And again, this is something that I've really had to work with over the years, the exploration of patience and being patient. It's okay, things will take time. Not like, oh, I've put the cake in the oven. Was it done yet? Taking it out, no, not done, put it back, can't wait. Needed everything right now. And so I've really had to be intentional about patience. And then the energy of persistence is the fourth lesson. We have to learn to see things through, to be persistent, to carry on, to use the Saturn focus and go, yeah, I'm going to see this through. I'm going to carry on. And when we look at, again, the great sportsmen, the musicians, the people that have reached the peak in their field, they have persistence. They see things through. They persist and they keep going. But the next stage, the next lesson is reality. And this is one of the biggest lessons to learn with Saturn, because Saturn teaches us reality. It's like, get real. because you can persist and persist and persist. You can continue to practice your piano 10, 12 hours a day. But there will come a point where you recognize where that persistence has got you. Now, for some, it's like, do you know what? There I am, top of the tree. For others, it's going to be, okay, I've just spent 10, 12 hours a day practicing the piano. I've done nothing else. And this is a really powerful lesson to recognize in work, business, and home. Because to have success, you need a level of persistence. But if that persistence then becomes dogmatic, in a rut, overworking, there is no work-life balance. Your persistence doesn't bring you success. It brings you a limitation in another area of your life. So Saturn also teaches us reality. Because if you are a workaholic and you focus on your business for 12 hours a day, where is there space for anything else? How can you enjoy the success? And I'm putting that kind of in brackets, in italics, in speech marks even. How can you enjoy the success that you so desperately desired? Because there is no time, another lesson of Saturn, for you to spend doing anything else. So Saturn teaches us reality. And then there is the energy of responsibility. Saturn teaches us responsibility so that we can take responsibility for ourselves, but also recognize and empower others to take responsibility for themselves. Because when we learn the lesson of reality, it's like, oh, okay, so I've focused on my work for 10 hours, 12 hours a day. I now have no family life. I've turned around and I've looked at my children and they're all grown up. My partner have built their own life, life interests, and where am I? I'm on my own. So Saturn then teaches us to take responsibility for everything that's gone before. And at that point, when we do take responsibility and we say, okay, this is down to me, I have a choice now in what I do going forward. That is when you can step into the energy of mastery. And mastery is when we have all of those other lessons, we have our ducks in the row. We play by the rules until we don't. We use time to our advantage. We spend our time wisely. We experience patience. We are patient. We know when to sit back and to wait for things to unfold. We persist. We are determined when we need to be. And we recognize when that persistence has paid off. We take responsibility for ourselves and everything that we have and are calling into our lives. And then we reach mastery. And mastery is when you come into the energy knowing and celebrating that you were born for a reason, to become the best version of you possibly can be. Many spiritual people can be trapped here at mastery because when we fully embrace mastery, we are completely okay with being a role model. We're also completely okay with the energy of disappointment. It's okay to disappoint others. We will never live up to everybody's ideals of us. So if you're afraid of disappointing other people, if you don't want to become a role model, you will never reach the final stage of mastery. Something will hold you back from reaching your true potential. Now, one thing I will add here is mastery is not an end point. It's not like, ta-da, there I am, top of the mountain, top of the tree, tick. It's a process. It's a continuous process because Saturn is a continuous process. You will feel where you are approaching mastery when you feel an innate confidence. You do step into that energy of being a role model for others. And this can be in your family. Perhaps you are a role model within your family. Perhaps you are a role model within your community. You lead by example. Perhaps you're a role model in your workplace. When you become a master of your life, you recognize that you do excel at something. You are the best at something. And the something that you are the best at is being you. And this is the most magical piece of Saturn, because ultimately he teaches you to be you. That true success and mastery is being yourself. And then everything else slots in place. And the Saturn cycle is what teaches us this. And Saturn's cycle, as I've said before, takes 29 years. But it's not a journey on its own, because you have things called Saturn squares, oppositions, and second squares, and they happen every 7 years. So here we have the number 7 again. The number 7 is really important in our world. We have 7 chakras. Saturn has 7 rings. There are, the energy of 7 is a really powerful energy. And so Saturn as a journey, every 7 years we are experiencing Saturn in a square, opposition, second square, or return. So we have an opportunity to evolve into that process of the 7 stages of Saturn throughout those squares, oppositions, second squares, and returns. So whenever you are feeling isolated or fearful, alone or restricted or trapped, this is part of your Saturn lesson. It'll be Saturn exerting his influence and asking you that age-old question: who are you? Who are you at core level? How have you evolved and grown? Because the more we can look at our fears, the more you can recognize, what am I most afraid of, and face them, the quicker and easier you will move through your Saturn journey. It is okay to fear change. It is okay to fear what will happen on the other side, because this is what Saturn is teaching you. Saturn is teaching you to grow up, to become resilient. Saturn's transits can sometimes feel deeply uncomfortable. He's not out to get you. He's here to help you grow. When there is a Saturn transit happening, it is a time to come into yourself. It is a time to face your fear and to move through it. It is not necessarily a time for visioning, for dreaming. It is a time for saying, okay, what do I need to do in the next hour, the next day, the next week? It is the time to say, okay, let's go deep within. Let's delve underneath this. Let's explore my relationships with the 7 stages: rules, time, persistence, responsibility. So whenever Saturn is doing his work and it feels as if things are turning inwards, trapped, restricted, limited, there are boundaries all around you. This is an opportunity to face your fears, to go to the root of those fears, and then to move through. To see this time as what can I learn and get better at? So when I come out the other side, I can expand and grow even more. So Saturn is not an energy to fear. Saturn is an energy to embrace. Because Master Time, the Time Lord, is teaching you to know yourself, teaching you to be you, to be the best version of you, and to see yourself as the only person that can do you, that can be you, and that you are the master and the expert at being you. And that is the biggest gift you can ever give yourself and the world around you. So now we have explored Saturn. The most important thing is what's for tea. So tea tonight is, well, it's actually Rosie's making it. So Rosie loves pasta. Okay, Rosie's a carb kid. Okay, she prefers that kind of food. So she's a bit of a pasta. I'm not a great fan of pasta. I try and eat as gluten-free as possible because my belly doesn't like it. My moon doesn't. Let's say my moon doesn't like pasta, and I tend to eat more kind of protein based. So she'll have pasta, and I don't tend to have it. So she would eat pasta every day if she could. I think most kids would. So we started to look at making our own homemade pasta. So we've made semolina egg pasta, and she loves it. And actually, it tastes so much yummier than the dried stuff. So we've made the dough, and we've done all the kneading and all of those things. So it's lovely. It's just get it all up, get your semolina flour, stick it on the top, put your eggs in the middle, a little bit of olive oil, give it a good old mix up, all with your hands, knead it, stick it in the fridge for half an hour, and then we've sectioned it out into little pieces because it makes so much. So we're freezing little lumps. And then, so she's making tonight, we're kind of having a bit of a ravioli. So we've got some bolognese sauce made, and we've YouTubed all the things. So we're going to experiment with some different shapes as well. We're going to make little bows where you squish it in the middle, and some kind of ravioli. And that's what's for tea. So Rosie is feeding me tonight with homemade pasta. So until next time, from my heart to yours, love and starlight. Thank you for listening to today's episode. It's always good to hear what you think. So please let me know by leaving a comment. And if you loved what you heard, then it would be amazing if you shared it with your friends. If you would like to explore astrology and energy healing on a deeper level, come and join a community of open-hearted souls inside my Facebook group, Astrological Energy Healing for Life and Business. So until next time, love and starlight. Bye for now.